So to begin with, we're going to go through all the little parts of, let's start with the slide. So the slide's a little different from the frame in that most of the things we're going to do to it are more in search of reliability as opposed to a low trigger. Things to do, number one, every other gun you own, I'm willing to bet if you look, this spot right here is rounded, as is the one on my gun. You can see that there's a chamfer on that edge now, just a little bit. I rounded that edge off so that the sharp corner of this isn't scraping on the top round in a mag when it's dragging over it. It aids in feeding reliability. So I heavily encourage you to polish the hell out of this rib here because again, it rides, the top round of the mag is riding on this when the gun's cycling. I also encourage you to polish the hell out of the breech face. In my opinion, that's more for ease of cleaning than reliability, but it certainly doesn't hurt. Some guys have had problems with a burr right here sticking out of the breech face where they machine the firing pin hole, causing all kinds of feeding issues. Make sure that this is smooth as glass. I'm going to polish the breech face. I'm going to polish behind the extractor really well right here. And that is the most important thing to do on the slide, along with, of course, doing a good polish on the rails. I like to do my buddy John's technique, and I'll take a Dremel and shine these up as well as I can, and then slather Blue Magic or whatever polishing compound you use all over the rails, put it on the frame, and just ride it back and forth by hand with the gun, otherwise torn down completely for about 100, 200 cycles, and just trying to lap the frame and slide together. That really helps things run smoother, especially if you're running a really light recoil spring. I'm also going to polish the inside of the firing pin block hole right here. My preferred method for doing that is to take a small piece of like 2000 grit sandpaper and roll it up really tightly. Dip it in wet dry sandpaper, obviously. Dip it in polishing compound. Stick it in there and let it kind of expand to the size of the hole. And then very lightly chuck it in a drill and run it in there and slowly run it in and out. And I'm keeping it completely soaked in polishing compound so that it's doing the work on the sandpaper. Same thing for the firing pin channel. I want to make sure that this is smooth all the way through and back. You can take a Q-tip and chuck it in a drill. You can take a piece of 2000 grit or finer, really, really ultra fine sandpaper that's available from auto parts store and chuck it in a drill and run it through the firing pin channel here. Just make sure that the firing pin channel and the firing pin blocks hole are both smooth as glass. And that is pretty much it for where I polish on the slide, except for, of course, the top and bottom of the extractor cutouts, particularly checking to see if there's a burr where they machined the hole through the slide for the roll pin. Make sure that the inner surfaces right here where that hole is located are burr-free. Extractor. You notice mine's rather shiny. I polished the hell out of the surface here and the surface here. The surfaces my fingers are touching. Make sure that it would pivot very easily through the frame. If you need to fit it to have a little bit more tension, if you ever see the need, removing material from this pad right here will cause the extractor to kind of cam inward more and hold on to rounds more tightly. More importantly, just make sure that this hook here isn't rounded or damaged. I polished the hell out of it, just because it's fun. And make sure, again, take a little sandpaper, roll it up tightly, put it in this hole, then chuck it in a drill and spin it soaked in polishing compound. Make sure this hole is smooth as glass. I want this extractor to pivot very freely on its pin. The roll pin for the extractor is in a different container over here, but again, you notice all the pins in there are shiny as anything. I chuck them in a drill and then take a Dremel with polishing compound on one of those buffing pads. So the pin is actually spinning in a drill while I hold the Dremel against it and go up and down it until it looks like wet chrome. Okay, so I am going to polish the firing pin block as well. You'll notice the outside surfaces here that rub along the interior of that hole are polished smooth as glass, and the head of it right here that the sear actually maneuvers up and down as the gun cycles is likewise smooth as glass. I want those, again, wet chrome. Ultra shiny. These will come rough and black and gritty, and I want that gone. Where we polish the trigger bar, the outsides, which are going to contact the frame, as you can see, are extremely shiny on both sides. I also want to take extra care to polish this surface right here, this ramp The trigger bar plunger rides on that, and if that is not smooth as anything, you will get a very gritty trigger pull. Other places to note, all of the surfaces across the back here, particularly the spot where this, where the tip of my punch is right now, is the spot that the bolo disconnector on my gun uses to this is what's pushing the hammer back, and then it gets cammed downward and the disconnector slides off the top and the hammer snaps forward and the gun fires. This is the primary operating surface in double action right here. Same thing for along the top edges right here and here. Everything that's basically on the top edge of the gun right here, I want to look like a wet mirror. I just basically, all these little surfaces back here, I polish the hell out of. If you have a 2-wing disconnector, you need to make sure you pay equal attention to this side and this side. I do both. There's no reason not to. The underside of it, same thing. Very shiny. Basically everything that you can now see above my finger on top, bottom, left, and right, I'm going to shine really, really, really well. With the sear, I'm going to want to polish the surface of the hammer and gauges here. And I'm also going to want to polish the underside right here. So those two surfaces and the outsides where they are going to ride on the sear cage, possible friction source there, and the whole outside here because it's flat and all of that can rub the sear cage. Okay. With the sear cage, okay, one of the most important surfaces to polish is basically the entire bottom. The trigger bar rides here, here, and then up these two ramps as the double action is pushed backwards, and eventually these two ramps push the trigger bar downward and allow the disconnector to kick loose and the hammer snaps forward to fire the gun. So on the bottom of the sear cage, I basically polish these surfaces like a mirror. Doing the rest of it, that won't hurt either. So I went ahead and did these while I was there. But the first ones I highlighted were crucial. I need to polish in here and in here, where the sear is going to rub. Obviously the sear lives in the middle, so these two surfaces are going to contact the outside of the sear, and I want to remove any friction that I can. You can fully polish this, a lot of the guys do. One of the benefits of fully polished parts is they're very, very easy to clean. They're so slick, gun goo won't stick to them. The disconnector. Okay, this is a bolo. This is the Patriot Defense disconnector. I'm going to polish the inside of this hole. Again, find something that'll go in there. You can use a piece of a Q-tip. I guess you might be able to get them there. I, again, use a very small piece of sandpaper, rolled up extra tightly. Let it go in there and then let's spring open so it fits the inside of the hole. Soak it in polishing compound and just run it back and forth with a drill. So that hole on the inside looks like wet chrome when you take a flashlight to it. I'm also going to polish the head of this point right here, because that is going to rub on the frame down inside the firing pin, or down inside the back side of the gun. I'm also going to polish the inside of this curve because that rubs along the trigger bar as the trigger resets. So I'm going to polish here, and I'm going to polish a very crucial surface for your double action right there. Get that smooth as glass. I fully polished the whole thing, again, mostly because it's easy to clean and it doesn't hurt. But those are the primary crucial surfaces to get slick as anything. Most people, if they make a mistake when they're setting up one of these guns, they neglect polishing the inside of the holes and polishing the pins, especially the inside of the holes. That is huge. Okay, all your pins in the gun. If the piece of steel on the outside of them pivots, moves, whatever, polish them all like crazy. All right, got that covered. Now, crucial piece, trigger bar plunger. If I take this and I color this top part here blue for you, that surface, polish it, and then polish it again. That's metal on metal. There's a lot of spring pressure pushing this up against the underside of the trigger bar. It is crucial that you find the spot on the trigger bar that this engages and the head of this plunger and polish them both extremely well. I'm going to polish those, and I'm also going to polish this surface here, which was very, very rough on my gun. There was a huge machining burr here. This did a lot to take down my single and double action pulls. The inside of the hull. I also take a tip from Tony or Ari online. and actually take a bit that's shaped a lot like the head of the Sharpie. Pretend the Sharpie is a grinding stone or what have you that's spinning very rapidly. And when I put it in the hole and press, I'm going to take the sharp edge on the inside of that hole and kind of countersink it or chamfer it. So I take that sharp edge in the hole and break it, just a few thousandths, and polish the inside of that hole till it looks like a mirror. Those are the crucial surfaces to do on the head of the trigger bar plunger. The plunger itself, here, from this ridge down, I don't really have to worry about it. That's a stationary part. I polish it up just a little bit mostly to make it easier to clean. But what I do is I chuck this spot in a drill, and then out here, I'm going to polish that till I get an absolute mirror shine. Take a Dremel while this is spinning in a drill, hold it against it, and just slowly work back and forth so the whole thing gets an even, beautiful wet chrome look. The hammer. Okay. Right about, focus for me, there we go, right about here. This, where my Sharpie's drawing right here, those are your single action hammer hooks. Those are most of your pull weight. In single action, let me bring it over here. The sear and the hammer interface like this, all right? Do the right side up? Yes. Sear and hammer interface like this. So the back and underside edge of the sear, as mentioned earlier, and this spot on the hammer are your single action pull. That's the majority of the effort you're doing, is camming the sear up so that the hammer can ride forward. So there's not a lot of gain to be had in polishing the half cock notch here. I made that mistake, but you can, it doesn't hurt anything. But get this nice and polished. Don't break angles, don't stone it. Do that later once you figure out what you're doing with the gun. For the first setup, just polish the crud out of these with a Dremel. You also want to polish the sides of the hammer. So here on both sides. Make absolutely sure when you put your roll pins in that this pin and this pin don't stick out past flush. They should be below flush on both sides. Polish the hell out of this hole, and this hole. Polish the pin where the hammer strut rides. Polish the pin where the disconnector rides. Polish the hammer pin that it pivots on, and also polish the hell out of the hammer strut. You can fully polish the hammer if you feel like it, but you can see from that angle right there, I polished the part that's not sticking out the back of the gun when the hammer's cocked. I wanted the hammer to still be black, but I also wanted it to be slick.